Good morning, afternoon, or evening, folks, whatever time of day it is when you're watching, and welcome back to our Winnipeg Market Watch podcast. I believe this is our 14th episode, so almost at another milestone, 15 next time. Today, I am joined as usual by my partner in real estate, Denzel Sullivan, and a very special guest here, Sarah Dobie with the Remax One Group. Hi, Sarah. Welcome to the show.
Hi, happy to be here.
Awesome. You guys, Sarah has been a realtor for collectively 6 years. However, this is her first year back in real estate after switching careers 4 years ago. So, Sarah has an interesting story. She has a lot of really great perspectives from being involved in the real estate industry for quite a considerable period of time, but then also the whole dynamic of having left the industry and returned is something that we're definitely going to get into in our conversation near the end of this episode. But I am very excited to break down the data with both of you guys, as we usually do here on the Winnipeg Market Watch podcast, because I think January was a very good month. As a matter of fact, this January, our market saw a price gain of 1.88%, which leaves us down 1.5 points from the 2022 all-time high. But we all are already a quarter of a percentage point higher than anything we saw in 2024. On the surface, you guys, any immediate reactions, Denzel or Sarah, whoever wants to jump right in, let me know what you think of this.
I'll go first here.
Okay.
I'm very excited to see that a lot of our predictions back in December and November are coming together now. I had a lot of personally, I had a lot of inventory that was coming to market in January, and they did well. So I'm really happy about that. And I'm also excited to see, if there's going to be further rate cuts, it's just going to help affordability for the buyers that are, starting their house hunting journeys now. So I think that's good for people in Winnipeg that are looking to buy. And anyone looking to sell, obviously, the saying goes, as interest rates come down, prices go up. So uh, obviously, it's going to be good if they're deciding to sell. But I don't know. I think this spring is going to be exactly what we're predicting, and it's going to be super busy, and a lot of people are going to well, they might have a tough time finding a house if the inventory stays as tight as it is right now.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I can really second that. I know we talked about January being busy and being crazy, but at the same time, we know January to typically be a slower month. So, I mean, I still have my holiday decorations up because there's just been no time. So, if that tells you anything, it's been more crazy than I expected. However, like, and that said, we did also anticipate that January would be busy. Um, Late in the year in 2024, we had a lot of buyers expressing interest in wanting to get started. And I think a lot of people are thinking, we'll take advantage of the fact that there's less competition early in the year because they know it's going to be busy when we get into spring.
No doubt about that. And I've been feeling the same in my own business. First of all, what I've done with Denzel for the last 3 or 4 months, we've both seen a pretty strong uptick in home buyer activity, but also I would say investor activity as well, anecdotally
Oh
speaking.
yeah.
Mhm.
Um, it feels more like the 2021 or two era where people were having good feelings about investing in real estate again. And the asset class in general isn't something that people are scared of like it might have been at the end of 2022 or early 2023, where I think back then a lot of people in that January when the market went up, they were making comments like, oh, this isn't going to last. The spring is going to be a bust. But then we actually ended up with a pretty good year, all things considered. So I don't know how much you guys want to talk about the government and Bank of Canada stuff here on this show today, but we had a pretty wild January in terms of the political implications of the Trump tariffs that never came, the discourse of is Canada going to become the United States, and then possibly most significantly to real estate, we had another interest rate cut, which was expected, but also an early end to the quantitative tightening that the Bank of Canada has been doing now since 2022. Now that the money printer seems to be back on, is that influencing any of your outlooks or predictions for the spring that we're about to set foot into, you guys?
Um, For me, I think that it's been tough to make some of the decisions that we've came across lately, Keenan, just because we've been here in a market. We've been here before where, it looks like the price trends is, moving upwards, but how much is the question, right? Like we might get a deal that might not look like anything today, right?
Mhm.
In a good area, and we're having to try to make a decision on, do we price in a little bit of a market increase? Nothing insane. Like we're not going to say it's going to be 10% or anything like that, like in June or anything like that. But
Yeah.
just making those decisions is I feel as an investor, uh, doing flips specifically is a little bit more challenging because it's hard not to look at some of the profit when you're thinking of buying things at the moment, right? Because a lot of the stuff that I had in October where I looked at it and I was like, oh, I don't know if this is going to make that much money. We ended up making more money. Like I just had a house in Old St. Vital. The ARV at the time when we were doing the underwriting was something like 485 or 505, and we ended up selling for 540, and so, that's 7-8% more than what people were telling me when I was buying that house. So
Myself included, by the
yeah,
way. I said
Keaton was like, I don't know if I like that one, man. But I was like, I don't know. I feel it. I feel it. But yeah, I don't know. I just think that as an investor, it is something to consider, that not to get too caught up with how, you know, great things are being portrayed in the media and still move forward with some, just move responsibly through the market and don't get too ahead of yourself with pricing and too much of a market increase.
And Sarah, anything to add or any perspectives of your own on the matter?
Not too terribly much. Just it's uncertainty, right? So, um, we've really been, I've been, when I talk to my people, we really talk about sticking to the plan in times like this. It's a lot of uncertainty and we don't know anything for sure. So we make the plan, we stick to it, and when we're feeling unsure, we go back to that plan and weigh the pros and cons because we can only really act with what we know is right in front of us right now. You can plan. I think if the last little bit has taught us anything, you can plan for the future and, oh, we expect this to happen, and it could go the complete opposite way. So we just stick to our plan.
I think that's the right choice. And especially for home buyers out there, I think trying to chase the market or trying to front run the market can be really hard and make you miss property. And
Yeah.
it's a tough balance too to win a bidding war. You often need to overpay, but you need to be very pointed by, how much are you willing to do that. But on the other hand, if you try to pay a fair price, you might get second place an awful lot. And getting second place in a multiple offer night means you lost. So,
Yeah.
there's no consolation prizes in real estate, folks. Very funny. And I see Denzel laughing with his mic muted. So that
Yeah,
means that,
sorry.
that was.
If you're not
Um,
first, you're last. That's for sure.
you're not
Yeah.
first or last in real estate. Yeah, that's a Ricky Bobby moment right there. I'm getting where.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. If you
Yeah.
don't shoot big red, then you can. I'm not going to finish that. You've seen that movie, you know what I'm going to say. Um, in terms of supply, this is something a lot of you guys might know that the board puts out their own data set about a week after I do, and they make like a nice little infographic so realtors can self-brand and post that on Instagram. I always beat the board by at least a week in my market updates, so make sure to subscribe to us here, winnipegmarketwatch.com/substack. We will always be the first to the table. But in terms of supply, the board in their publication wrote that supply is much lower than this time last year, which is true. January 2024 had 1,300 listings compared to just under 1,100 in 2025. Also, we only had 765 current listings compared to over 900 last year. However, month over month, we actually had an increase in supply from December, which I was a little bit surprised at to some extent, just on the basis that most years that gap is really, really insignificant. It was almost 10% month over month this time. Um, with that aside, this is actually one of the most similar months in terms of supply that we've seen since January 2021. Now, if you guys don't have the HPI chart in front of you right now, I encourage you to scroll up in the Substack article and just see the January 2021 to June 2021 line. Keep in mind that we've started this year in a very, very similar manner to that year, and understand that while we probably won't see quite a vertical acceleration, the stage is set for this to be a remarkably similar year to what we saw then. Any reactions to the supply picture, and any reactions at all to the month-over-month changes in particular? Let's start with you, Sarah.
So again, it's sort of what we predicted. We know that we have limited supply and there's a lot of demand. So it's, yeah, without being too redundant, it's really what we predicted.
True enough.
Yeah. And so my reaction is, we got to start, like, if you're looking at getting into it, we got to start looking and really understanding value and understanding your own personal goals. And be smart about making a move, because it's wild.
It is. No, it sure is. The stage is set for another 2021, and I remember how I felt in 2021. I was less experienced, but it was crazy. Mm-hmm. And Denzel was just getting started around then too. I think Denzel started in real estate in 2020. So Denzel, knowing what you know about trading in real estate in 2021 and seeing the stage set in a very similar manner, how are you feeling and processing this supply picture right now?
Well, it's a little bit different today because all the experience that I've gotten over the past 3 years, especially going through the correction and learning some hard lessons during that period. Right now, I'm in a position where I have inventory to sell, whether it's my rental properties that I'm unloading, or if it's, whatever deals that I'm able to put under contract now and kind of look forward into later into the spring and etc. I think that it's exciting for me to now have the experience that I have and be what I feel ahead of things a little bit more. Back in 2021, I can remember that I was not paying attention as much as I should have to kind of the key indicators of how crazy things were going to get, because we're starting from a point where we're not very far away from the all-time highs. What is it, Keenan?
It's just under 1.5% away.
Yeah, like we're gonna for sure pass that by the end of February. I think, I have a listing right now in St. James, and it's a 900, well, just shy of 900 square feet, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and I've had 42 showings. I just got another one actually now, so 43 showings on that place, and it's listed for 320, and I actually thought before even listing the property that was a high list price, but with these rates coming down and people's pre-approvals allowing them to afford a little bit more, this now becomes like a reality that they can pay that much, right? And so for a lot of people, I just think that buyers need to know that if they're wanting to be competitive, especially for like the more desirable conventional products, they're going to have to know that, okay, we're going to have to maybe get a pre-inspection or something, like be prepared to write an offer that's unconditional. Because I know for me, being in the driver's seat, like that's what I'm wanting to see, a clean offer, asking price at least with a really tight possession if possible. And then as a seller, it's just, if you got something, it's probably a good time to unload that. If you didn't have a good time being a landlord the past 4 years because you got caught up in, high interest rates and you're on variable mortgages, it's probably a good idea to try restarting, like sell some of the stuff that you own and pivot into some better deals if you can. But yeah, overall, I can't say it enough. Like, this is something that we've been talking about for 2-3 episodes now, that this spring's going to be busy, and it's almost like a spring was loading in the fall, and me and you were just like, yeah, it's going to happen, and then here we are.
It's 100% true. And normally this would be the part of the episode where we talk about which MLS areas were hot, but this January, it's the case actually that the majority of MLS areas didn't even have 5 listings come up. So
Wow.
when you look at an environment like that in St. James 5E, where the house you're talking about is located, there were 10 listings and 9 of them sold in January. So there's 90% absorption already. So yeah, you could get away with pricing a 900 square foot bungalow a little higher than the comps might suggest at this point. And further to that, Denzel, we've written several offers this January for prices that at least I thought were reasonable for what was being put on the table. And we were getting not only beat, but in some of these cases, we were getting blown out of the water
Yeah.
by,
Yeah.
by some of these bids. It's and like, yeah, it's funny to say, right? But there's always at this point in the year, like my optimism and my understanding of what probably is going to happen is just starting to really take shape. I've been screaming to the universe that I think the all-time high is coming. I've been called Mr. 472 in comment sections on YouTube and Facebook and Substack, of course, by all kinds of the readers here. And like, I think some of it's tongue in cheek. I think some of these people actually really do want to see it, but it sounds so ambitious. This is what I kind of thought was going to happen. And honestly, I agree with the spring analogy, like not like the spring, the season, but spring is in like the coil analogy where we got pushed
Yeah.
down and now the ball's going to get popped back up out of the water.
Yeah.
So there you have it. Like without being too repetitive, unless Sarah, you've got something brilliant to chime in and add.
No, I don't.
Yeah, we could talk about the same thing for another half an hour, but that's what we're facing here. So with market talk kind of out of the way, Sarah, first of all, I'm really glad to have you with Denzel and I on the show today. I know that you are the first lady that we've had on the Winnipeg Market Watch podcast. We are very honored after 14 episodes to break our streak of the broadcast lifestyle here.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here too. Happy. It's an honor, really, to be the first. We were joking earlier, the first Market Watch lady. So
there you go.
Yeah.
So I've got a few questions that I definitely want to ask you about your experience and just your story of being in real estate, leaving the industry, and then getting yourself back involved. I also know that I want to ask you a little bit about just your experience and how it would probably differ from someone like mine or Denzel's. I know that as young guys, we operate in a way that might be totally different than the average realtor, and then it would probably also be different from a woman just by nature of what we get involved in. So I guess first things first for you and your story, do you want to tell us a little bit about your background? Like what prompted your decision to, first of all, get started in real estate? And then eventually when you did leave, what were you hoping for in your time away and why'd you come back?
yeah. Well, what originally prompted my my jump into real estate, it's sort of twofold. Real estate, homes, they were really familiar to me. My dad and brother were sort of flipping houses, and it was just a familiar space for me. And I graduated university and thought, holy cow, I need a job now. What am I going to do? So I had an economics major and I was sort of applying, but also feeling kind of like, feeling a little lost. And it felt like a really natural transition to start getting to do the different modules and get into real estate. So that's what really catapulted my jump in. And then I quickly learned that it's incredibly lonely. You've left with a lot of free time, like not free time, but there's a lot of hours in the day and there's no one to really, guide you through that time. Like how can you be productive in your days? What works, what doesn't work, what should you be doing is the other thing. um I had a friend ask me once, so what do you do all day? And I literally couldn't answer. I was like, I don't know. So
That's funny.
yeah, I used to, when I first left, so I'll digress a little. I was in the business for about 4 or 5 years, and I did okay. I did okay until things started to get really tough. And then, so this is around 2018, 2019. And then I realized um, I don't have the skills, or I'm not like, I can't keep this up anymore. I can't keep up with the fees. I can't contribute to my savings. Like, I can't keep going down this hole. And I used to say it was that I didn't have the the attitude, like that I'm gonna wake up today and sell a house kind of attitude. But I quickly learned it was really more, it's not that I didn't have the attitude. I kind of even shamed myself for that a little bit. Like, I'm just not driven enough. But it was really, I didn't know how. I didn't have the skill set to be successful in the business quite yet. And it's something that you learn, but you can't, it's hard to learn it on your own, and I didn't really know how. So that's why I left. I worked in sort of worked for myself a little bit. I had a little online boutique that was so fun, filled my creative cup, and then I also got a 9 to 5 working in e-com and digital marketing, and I learned a ton there and worked with some really great people. So yeah, learned a little more, grew up a little bit maybe, and thought, I loved the business. Still love homes, still love sales. I felt ready now to come back.
I gotcha. Because you
Mhm.
were pretty young when you first got your real estate license the first time,
Yeah, I
right?
was in my early 20s. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
I don't know how old most of the people out there listening are, but it's very unusual as like a 22-year-old that the average home buyer or seller is going to look at you and go, yeah, yeah, you're trustworthy to handle my $500,000 or $1 million transaction. Go ahead, go nuts. Like, I'm putting this in your hands. Take care of me. Even as
Yeah.
a 25-year-old, when I got started, I was getting a lot of looks from people like, are you serious? Like, what?
Yeah. And I felt like,
Expect?
yeah, I really felt that you feel that. And then I almost used other people to validate myself, or like I didn't have the confidence to be like, I know what I'm doing, I know what I'm talking about. But I could say, oh, this person, like, I heard this from someone else, or like, it just wasn't, I lacked a lot of confidence.
Mhm.
um
Yeah.
yeah, that you sort of learn over time. But yeah, I definitely felt that it just was not, it's just not a good recipe for success when you don't have the confidence in yourself, and people don't have, how can they have confidence in you as a young person, even if you do know what you're talking about, if you can't behave accordingly. Like, I don't know, do you guys feel that in your Denzel, in your industry? I'm sure you work with a variety of people at different levels, and
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, especially, so I started when I was 22 years old. That's when I bought my first place, but I didn't really start getting into like syndicating capital and, getting in front of private sellers and stuff like that until probably 23, 24. But even being that young, I think I did have some sales ability before getting into real estate. Like, I came from a background in sales, working at TELUS and stuff like that. So I had some uh confidence in, like, if I had a contract in front of me, I can navigate through that contract and explain it to somebody with confidence. And that's a huge part of real estate. You're sitting in front of someone with a listing contract. You need to be able to explain like what they're signing, right? And that's like a kind of a big deal. Or for me, I'm buying a house for 200 grand or something like that, and I'm trying to explain to the seller, yeah, this is what we need to sign here, and this is what it means when I write this, and et cetera, right?
Mhm.
Or, I'm raising $250,000 and I'm going through a contract with the guy, and he's like, oh yeah, sure. And then, like, it's just it's there's a lot of moving parts in real estate. It's a lot of money that you're handling often. And so yeah, it's almost like the older you are, the more confidence people are going to have just naturally. And so when you get into an industry like real estate, as a young person, they're like, this person hasn't even bought their own house yet. How am I supposed to handle, or how am I supposed to trust that they can help me buy or sell right now?
100%.
Um, I think having some level of construction knowledge could help in the sales process when you're like walking a buyer through a house and just kind of knowing like that's not good and this is good and they missed this and they got that. Like being able to spot those things could be valuable to buyers. And even for sellers too, knowing like what's going to work when they go to market, I think is important. But yeah, as I kind of go through my career and every day I learn something new, it's definitely something that I've been told recently actually that as I age, it's going to be like I'm just going to continue to get better. But because I started so young, like I could come off as someone who might not know much until you start talking to me, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think that I kind of did go through something similar at the start, but thankfully
Mhm.
I had some of that sales ability. And even if I didn't exactly know what I was talking about, I think I had the communication skills to word that in a way that I would get back to them with the right answer, you know?
Yes. That's
Yeah, but
huge. Yeah.
yeah, because there's a lot of role play I remember that I'd do. And this might sound weird to you guys, but I'd be in the car and I'd like kind of just talk out loud so that I could quickly answer questions that I knew that I was getting a lot.
A
Um,
100%.
just
That's
so that I just so that when I would get the question, I'm like, boom, right there, right? Like I can answer it and it's sharp and it's quick. And
mhm.
yeah.
So I'm going to ask both of you this then. Do you think that your ability to overcome some of those apprehensions was just due to getting older and more mature? Or do you think that you put a strategy in place to be able to build self confidence and overcome those doubts that would have been independent of getting older? Sarah, specifically, I want to hear what you have to say about that.
Strategy for sure. It's for sure. It's very intentional. Because that said, you could be you could continue getting older and not getting any wiser, like wisdom doesn't just come with age. I mean, it does, you go through more, but being more confident and being more skilled now it's really intentional. Um, Denzel, I'm happy it excites me to hear that you too sort of have a script and role play and something that coming back, I feel like I learned this really through my 9 to 5, the importance of being prepared, and doing research and really having knowing what you're talking about before you get into something, so that you can walk through any interaction as seamlessly and smoothly as possible. Um, I remember one of my first buyer calls it was a realtor.ca lead. And this was a year ago. So I was like really just licensed and not even full time yet. And I made a script and like literally a flow chart and I rehearsed this. I was like, okay, these are the potential outcomes. These are the things she could say. These are some potential things she could say. Obviously, I don't know everything, but yeah, I had a flow chart and I rehearsed that for a buyer, like a realtor.ca lead, that if any other realtors listening, they know that these realtor.ca leads, they come and they go. And half the time they're not super like really serious or qualified leads. But every interaction was so important to me, and I wanted to be prepared going into it, and then immediately after be able to reflect on it and say, okay, where could I have gone better through this conversation? So I'm happy to hear that you too do a little rehearsing.
Yeah, definitely. Sorry, Keenan, but I know it looked like you're about to say something there. But before you jump in, I just want to say that, yeah, I think being able to go through a script in a not in a non-robotic way, obviously, is something where it gives you somewhat of a process when you speak to people. This business is a lot about marketing and lead generation. Even for myself, I'm not a real estate agent, but I am someone who is actively marketing it privately for leads and things like that to find property to either wholesale or to flip. And so knowing even like if a seller calls me off of like some yellow letter that I've happened to leave in their mailbox, I need to know how to speak to them in a way that's still human like, right? Like
Oh,
they're not
yeah.
just talking to some, hey, I'm Denzel and blah 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 blah. Like it needs to flow in a conversation. And as long as you know, I feel like as you start to go through the scripts, if you know the main parts of that script and the goal of the certain questions you might ask, that stuff's super important and is going to help a lot with converting any kind of lead, whether it's on the sales side, working with a buyer or a seller.
Hmm.
So I'm going to ask each of you this, and I'll start with Sarah. But a lot of people listening are probably wondering, how did you go about even knowing what to say? I think a lot of people getting started might not even know where to start with creating that script or knowing what kind of questions they might get asked or what kind of conversations they might have. I'd like to hear from the both of you. How did you figure that out? Was it a mentor? Was it from a book? And if so, which mentor and which book? Or, it's open ended. So if there is something else, I'd like to know.
Totally. I think it's for me, it's it's both of those. Well, not it's twofold though. It's having a mentor for sure. In fact, when I even first decided to come back into real estate, connecting with someone that I knew in the industry, I could go to for mentorship was really, really important to me. And it was being in the office and listening to other agents, including yourself, Keenan, listening to other agents speak and have conversations with their buyers. And um, so that was part of it. And then the second part was understanding the goal of the conversation. And I think that probably was something that a mentor told me, like, make sure you know what's the goal. I'm sure I heard that in passing, but approaching every situation with what's the goal of this conversation and then acting accordingly, that is really what helped me build the script. And a lot of the times the goal is just listening. I think, where there's a perception in sales, salespeople love to talk. And I mean, I do love to talk. I'm here talking now. Um, but really understanding what it means to listen and to ask leading questions that are going to help you get the answers that you need in order to help that person. That's really, really important. Um, yeah, but that's
Couldn't
how I
agree
make
more.
the scripts.
And I definitely remember in some of our trainings over the years that whole think of the goal of the conversation. What are you really trying to accomplish by saying what you're saying? And why are you picking up the phone? And thinking that
Yeah.
through is very, very valuable. And I would say my perception from having dealt with good agents, bad agents, good investors, well, actually, very good investors, and not so great investors. One of the things that I can immediately notice is when I get on the call or on a phone call with any of those parties and they don't seem to know what they're doing or they don't really understand what's being asked of them or they're misunderstanding the questions that I'm asking, that to me is right away a telltale sign that this could be a problem. But when you do talk to somebody that's capable, competent, self-actualized, it is immediately obvious in first of all how they conduct themselves, but also in the brevity and precision of their answers. And I think that's really an admirable thing to strive for. And knowing what you're getting on the phone for will give you that ability to be able to succeed in those kind of situations. Denzel, if you're able to answer at this point, I would like to hear what you have to say to that. Was it a mentor for you? Was it books, training? I know that you've gone through a lot and we've talked about it in the
Yeah.
past. I'd love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, so I did definitely take some like real estate coaching and stuff like that. And they had some scripts available that I still use today. Maybe not word for word, but I kind of get a general sense of like what the goals of the scripts were. Um, and when I first started, I actually spent like $1,000 on a 1 day, 8 hour coaching session with someone who actually used to be a part of Stefan Arnio, if anyone remembers that name whatsoever still. He was a real estate guru, I suppose, in Canada, and had a lot of people who were working for him. And so uh, I learned directly from his acquisition manager of, how he was able to get as many deals as he's done to this point. And the scripts that he provided me with were very valuable, super useful, and they flowed almost word for word on some calls. Like I'd get a call from a yellow letter, and I'd read the script, and I'm like, holy crap, I'm getting all this information, and it feels like it's involuntary. Like the seller would just give me a bunch of stuff, and I'd say, what? Like that was genius. Like after I get off the phone with them, and so yeah, scripts are powerful if you can master them and obviously add your own personal touch to it. They can be very useful for a business like this.
So for those of you listening, I just want to throw in scripts don't necessarily mean that you have to go word for word off of a piece of paper. Because believe me, I've gotten calls, especially from you young folks out there going, hi there, I am looking for a realtor and I would like to purchase distressed off market property. Like, no, don't do that. That's not what scripts are for. The idea is you need the direction of a conversation, and then you need to take the message and put it into your own words. So in a very condensed form of the last 10 minutes or so, I'd say that's the critical part. And I do think there's huge value in having a mentor or mentors. I've had many, I still have many. And no matter where you're at in your career, unless you're less than 12 months from retiring, I think there's a ton of value in having somebody to just bounce stuff off of and talk stuff through and get a different perspective. Because I know for me, sometimes I get too far in my own head, and that can lead me down paths that I shouldn't have walked. And all I would need is somebody to just grab me by the arm and go, nope, back on this one. And then I'm good to go. And I really think that that's one of the most important things you can have in business, in sports, in anything that requires psychology, which I think is just life. But without getting too philosophical here, Sarah, I did want to ask you about one moment that you and I have brought up on the phone and in person a lot. I know you're laughing because I know you know what this is, but
Yeah.
when you first got back into real estate, I think this was probably the second time I'd met you, maybe ever. We had a Christmas party at the Judy Lindsay team office when you still worked there. Sarah's with Remax One Group now, just FYI.
Oh yeah, I should have said earlier, shouldn't I? Yeah.
Not a problem. I knew Sarah only in a very limited manner, and I'd like you to talk about what happened there and what kind of psychological shifts the aftermath of that conversation resulted in for you. What happened with that whole circumstance, and what would you do now if you were in the same situation?
Totally. And we laugh about this now. So it was the Christmas party. I went in, I was nervous. I was just approved by Manitoba Securities Commission. So really just getting into it. And my attitude for the year has been, and what it will continue to be, is to say yes, go to all the things. So the office is having this Christmas party. I'm thinking, I gotta go. I got to at least show face at this, meet the other agents, practice, just show up. So I'm nervous. I'm feeling like I prepared for it by practicing. I practiced small talk. I was like, had a couple of stats. I was like, I can breeze through this little Christmas party networking event at the office. Like, it'll be great. And I get there, Keenan, we're chatting with some lovely people, and this lovely gentleman asks a very like open-ended market question, and Keenan looks at me and he goes, "Why don't you answer this?" or something along those lines. And I totally freeze. I don't even remember what answer I threw out there, but it obviously lacked any valuable information. And I just kind of threw it back at Keenan. And that feeling, that gut, like that hole in your stomach when you know you messed up, like I was driving home after and thought to myself, I never want to be in that position again. I had such a great opportunity. I felt like I had prepared for the event, but I prepared in all the wrong ways. Like, why was I practicing small talk? I know that comes naturally to me. Like, I can breeze through a party, no problem. Um, what it nailed home for me was do your research, but research the right stuff. Like, we were at an office holiday party. It's a real estate office. Of course, people are going to ask real estate questions. And so know what you're getting, like know your stuff when you go in. Even if you like if Keenan, if you didn't ask that question, you still should just know your stuff. Don't know it and expect to talk about it, but um yeah, you gave me a really good opportunity and to be able to show that I know what I'm talking about. And I dropped the ball. Like, and that I was driving home and thought to myself, that just can't happen ever again. So you're not going to get the ball thrown to you very often. So when you do get it, you got to hit the layup. Like, you've got to be prepared. You got to know your stuff, know the right stuff, and show up. So that was a real turning point for me. I think about that often. I Yeah, it was really pivotal moment for my career. And from that moment on, I like to think that I at least we're always learning, but I try to anticipate more correctly what are some potential questions that this person might have, and how can I be have as much information as possible to potentially answer it should I need to. You're not going into every situation thinking, here's my 5 real estate stats I can throw out. So yeah, I hope that answers the question eloquently.
No, that's great, and honestly, I feel bad sometimes when you tell that story because I feel a little bit bad for not trying to bail you out of that. But
You
I also
you did bail me out. You did bail me out, but
yes, I did in the end. But I think
yeah.
about it too, and I'm in my own head trying to draw parallels to my own career in life. And Denzel, I'm sure you can too, of a moment either in real estate or somewhere else where you felt like, oh no, I've really blown this. I don't know what to do about this. And for me, it was in, I think, 2018. I was sent on an evaluation by Guy, who was on this show, my stepdad, to go and evaluate a property in the Crescentwood area. And I didn't know it was a duplex until I walked in. I did the whole evaluation thinking it was a single family home. And then I walked in and realized it was a duplex.
Oh.
I was 25 or so. And the
Mhm.
seller's looking at me like I'm totally clueless. And I was. I just stopped. Like, I need to go back to my office and do this all again and come back to you. And then I told Guy what happened, and he ended up going in and dealing with the seller. I don't even remember what happened with the property, but I remember standing there going like, how did I miss that? Like, how did I not
Mhm.
understand that? And that was a moment for me where I took that experience and thought, you know what? I now need to really zone in on evaluating property and understand what I'm doing before I just nonchalantly hop out the car and walk up to a house and tell someone what it's worth. That's not a good way to
100%.
do it. And by the time Denzel and I connected and started making projections about future sale prices or ARVs or talking about the value of property as it is or what's a fair offer or what can things sell for, I had already started honing that skill. And then through our relationship was able to, I think, at least in my opinion, make me one of the most accurate evaluators of property, I hope, in the world. But I'm going to say at least
Keenan gets a lot of reps for sure.
Shoot for the stars. Or what do they say?
Yeah.
Shoot for the moon. You'll
Exactly. I can evaluate real estate
ignorance is
property pretty
bliss.
effectively. I don't know that I could evaluate property in other parts of the world quite as accurately, but I think I've got a pretty good understanding of the city, as does everybody in this call. But I know we're almost out of time here. Denzel, did you have anything to add to those stories? Do you have an anecdote or a little fun tale about something that kind of made you feel that way in a correction psychologically that allowed you to alter course and continue down your path of success?
Yeah, you know what? I think when the market corrected, my in my seat, being an investor and stuff like that, I get a lot of questions about the market from my investors. They're
Mm-hmm.
wanting to know like, okay, how's this area doing? How's the market trading right now? What's the sentiment like? So I have to be on top of that stuff like pretty accurately. And that's why like when the market started to change in 2022 drastically, Keenan and I started to dig into a lot of things like absorption and MLS areas and understanding exactly what was going on and how that compared to previous years. And I think that was a huge like that whole period I learned so much and even now like still learning. But nothing is more important as an active partner in real estate for someone who's in the development space to know what's going on. How, because everything has an effect on, well, can have an effect on you. The biggest thing being interest rates. Obviously, that affects prices, and that's a huge part of the business, right? And also this the whole thing about the tariffs right now, I'm not going to get into it, but like there is an impact that can have on the real estate market for better or for worse, you know. And knowing those things and knowing what's going on exactly are important. And for again, I know Sarah, you just jumped in, and you're just getting back into things, but although it's not the most exciting things to read about all the time, having the ability to have like a conversation about that at somewhat of a high level can actually bring you more business because the people will listen to that and be like, oh, this person knows much more than just selling me my house, or
Mm-hmm.
selling this house. You go in there and you start talking about some of the things that are happening in the world. You come off as less salesy to a certain degree and you start to just add value, right? One of the reasons why I like working with Keenan is because of that reason. He knows a lot of stuff that's actually not directly related to real estate, but has knowledge of things outside of it too and how that can impact the business.
Mhm.
Um, I wasn't as connected to the things going on around us when the market corrected, and I think that's what happened. I probably would have been able to anticipate, okay, these rates are going to go up eventually. So maybe in the early parts of 2022, like I'm talking January, February, or even the late part of 2021, had I have been on top of the market and the things happening around it as I am now, I probably would have been able to anticipate that. Because the three of us here, we're talking about like, oh yeah, the market's going to be great for the next 6 months. It's pretty obvious, at least, that that's likely where things are going to go, right? But for someone who's just entering the market right now or who hasn't been watching it, they might still think, wow, those interest rates are high, and that it is still doom and gloom if they're not paying attention. Um, so yeah, I think that uh, getting put on the spot is definitely going to make you feel like you need to be better if you can't answer those questions. Because I've definitely had those moments.
Yeah,
Uh, and but it does make you a better, it makes you better at what you do, right? You're like, okay, I shouldn't do
Mhm.
that again. It's just like sports. And that's why, a lot of high performing athletes transition into business because of that reason, like, I'll use a basketball analogy. You have you think that you're preparing all week for this one guy that you're going to play against on the other team, and then little do you know, like you didn't watch some film specifically and he has something that he brings to the game that you weren't prepared for and you just get smoked, right?
Totally. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
funny you say that. I think of most interactions, showings, um, any conversation really. And at the end of it, I do a little reflection and I call it the game tape. Like, okay, I got to watch the game tape
yeah,
on this transaction, make little notes. Okay, what, and then that's how I can learn from situations. I
yeah,
really, but yeah, a lot of sport analogy. You got to study the opponent, know what Okay, what does a typical transaction look like? That's the regular, maybe the regular offense. Like, I try to draw in as
Exactly.
many sports analogies as possible.
Yeah.
They're really good for business,
Hmm.
and there's a reason people use them.
Yeah.
But Sarah, in the interest of time here, I know you've got some houses to show. I'd like to get going on our final question that we ask all of our guests every time they come on to the show. And honestly, it's been a super huge pleasure to have you. I've really enjoyed your insights, and
Yeah.
I'd love to have you back at some point. We'll do a follow-up episode eventually. But do you want to leave us with what your grand ambition or biggest desire in business is for all of our listeners to hear?
Oh, my grand ambition
Yeah.
is, you know,
You could be honest. You don't need to go too
yeah.
deep.
Well, I know I watch these. I try to think of a very politically correct. I watch these too,
This
and
is a
how did I not? Maybe I don't make it to the end to hear these these
that's okay. So
questions.
lesson
But
learned,
I just,
everybody. Listen to the end.
yeah, my grand ambition is to just um, do more transactions, work with as many people as I can manage, and yeah, it's just to connect more people to homes, and in that, some of the fallout is you can connect. You never know. It's just to connect as much as I can.
So
Yeah.
just build a great business in real estate.
Just doing more business. That's my grand ambition. More positive
Yeah.
interactions. Um, yeah. So from a micro sort of scope, just have as many positive interactions on a daily basis as I can, and have that hopefully translate to transactions, real estate transactions in the future.
Alrighty. Well, I know that you've got just a couple minutes here, maybe not even. But was there anything you wanted to ask Denzel or I specifically while we still got you?
Um, yeah, I'd like to hear your grand ambitions.
Denzel, you want to go first, or you want me to take this?
I'll go first. Grand
Okay.
ambitions, the overall big picture for this business is just to create a life where I don't necessarily need to worry about the prices
Mhm.
of things. I have a little one now, and me and my girlfriend, well, partner, and we want to have a bigger family. I want to be able to go on a trip, wherever in the world that might be, and not have to worry if we can afford that. Um, Live in a house that I'm happy with, and then drive a nice car, to be honest. I know that might be a little materialistic, but I do like cars. Um, so that's pretty much it. And I think all of us could agree to this. You go into business in hopes to earn more money, right? So that we can get back our time. Uh,
Mhm.
and more than anything now, having the family is just and understanding what we really want, and that can change, right? Yeah, just the time. Like, I'd love to just stay at home, maybe do a couple business moves, and just hang out. Like,
Yeah.
that would be awesome. You make a couple calls, you make a little bit of money, and life's good, right? Like, that's really what my grand ambition is. When I was younger, like when I first started this business, I was like, I'm gonna be the next Donald Trump and buy everything. But it's just not. I'm not saying that I'm not shooting for the stars anymore, but I think now, have being a dad and stuff like that, my perspective has shifted a lot. Um, yeah.
It's a good answer.
Mhm.
For myself, I've thought about this a lot recently as well. I'm not a dad yet, but I know I will be eventually one day. And so, above and beyond all else, I want to be a good husband and a good father. That's my grandest ambition. However, aside from that or related to that, I have made it a goal of mine that I want to die with my shoes on. I don't want to be sick in bed. I don't want to be old and keeled over. I don't want to like lose that killer instinct or that edge. And so that's generally how I want to see that go. But in addition to that, I wanted to really break down where would I like to see myself at 55 or 60, like tail end of the career. How is that looking? Am I still a realtor? Am I still doing what I'm doing? I'm just better at it. And I really thought about it, and I am going to shoot for the very ambitious goal of, by the time I'm 55, to be the CEO of a publicly traded company or the Prime Minister of Canada. And that would
I'm
be
voting. I'm
that would
voting.
be my grandest ambition that I could possibly have. I don't want to be so self-absorbed that I think I have all the answers and that I have the right to go and do all of this. But I think a part of self-actualization is proving to the world that that you can. And I hope that doesn't come off as arrogant or like prickish, but it's just a target to shoot for. And even if I get 75% of the way there, I'd say I still did pretty damn good. So that is my grand ambition.
Amazing. There's something really admirable about being able to say what you want and put that out there in the universe.
Well, fair enough.
100%.
Yeah.
I think time will tell if any of this happens, but I really want to push for that. And I know I do best when I'm working, even when I take a vacation. If I don't like do something work related after 4 or 5 days, I start to get a little squirrely. Like it's
Yeah.
it's built in. I've got that dog in me, as they might say.
Yes, you do. There you go.
Alrighty. Any final thoughts from either of you, or is that a good place to leave it here?
That's good.
Yeah,
good?
not from me. Great chatting with you guys.
Likewise, Sarah. It was a pleasure having you. And for folks listening, stay tuned. We will have another episode in March, and make sure you watch for the performance analysis series that will also be coming in March, where we break down all of the data from Winnipeg's MLS areas by absorption, so you can know exactly what's going on in the areas of city in your interest. So thanks again for your time, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you all soon.